Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. And on today's show, we have in our studio our guest, Joe Collins, who went from homeless veteran to challenging the toxic nightmare Democrat Congresswoman Maxine Waters for her congressional seat. We brought Joe in because today we're going to talk about how Texas Democrats are ruining the Texas economy. Of course, Joe felt this up close. He did his service with the U.S. Navy, came home from serving his country, and the economic situation that our country was in, the dire situation, caused him to go homeless. So Joe has felt the consequences of economic policies, the Democrat policies, the Democrat agenda up close. The entire purpose of today's show is to expose Texas Democrats and their actions and the direct effect it is having on your livelihood, on your income, on your savings, on your quality of life, on your wallet. Every time that you open your wallet up and you see less money, it is the result of the Democrat agenda, the Texas Democrat agenda. We will discuss how Texas Democrats are causing Texans to go broke, are causing our grocery store bills to skyrocket, are causing Texans to not be able to make their regular payment of bills. This is the actions of the Texas Democrats. And we will explain why it is important that you appropriately blame your Texas Democrats for these actions. Because you see, your Texas Democrats are agents of the globalists. And it is globalist policies, it is the globalist agenda that is being implemented here in Texas, which is what is hurting everyone. And by globalists, I mean the European billionaire class. The European billionaire class, which has put in place a plan to return the American citizen to a state of peasantry, to a state of misery, to a state of poverty. The billionaire class, the globalists, they do not have your best intentions in mind. In fact, they have only bad intentions in mind. And this is evident in their policies. It cannot be mistaken. And I'm going to give you a short list of just some of the things, some of the globalist agenda that's being carried out here in Texas by Texas Democrat that's hurting you. And the first example is the eradication of our domestic energy production, the eradication of our oil and gas sector. And what that is causing is gas prices to go up every year, 58% over the past 12 months. It is causing unemployment in a critical sector to Houston and to the state of Texas, and it is causing a depressed economy. And of course, the Democrat, with their international war agenda, whether the wars are in Israel or in Russia, but they expect you to pay for these wars. So they pull any money you have left in your wallet out of your wallet to make sure that the war machine keeps going. But you see, those wars, those also hurt imports of grains and other foods that come into for our grocery stores. That also causes price increases. And of course, then there's the Federal Reserve, another globalist organization, a partner organization to the Democrat Party. The Federal Reserve, with their constant interest rate hikes, causing rents to go up, causing housing prices, causing your mortgage to go up, and putting a foundational upward pressure on all parts of life, causing this hyperinflation that we're going through right now. This is all the result of a globalist agenda. This is a globalist agenda being put on the people of Texas, and it is being carried out locally by your Texas Democrats. These actions cannot be mistaken. It is obvious. It is a concerted effort to place Texans in a state of distress. This is why you see a constantly rising homeless population. This is why when you go to the grocery store, you will for the first time see people checking the price tags on everyday regular food items, everything from eggs to milk. You'll see them pick up the item and do a double take. They'll look at that price before they decide to purchase it. And this is why every time you go to fill up your tank of gas, you have a moment of stress. This is why home builders are now introducing the new small home concept. It's because the billionaire class, the globalists, have decided that you will have less And the Texas Democrats are making sure of it. And Texas Democrats, they are the agents of the globalists. They are on the front lines implementing this globalist agenda. Because while the globalists are in their conference rooms, mapping out plans on their whiteboards to place Texans in poverty, what Texas Democrats do is they go on radio shows. They go on radio shows and news outlets to divert your attention and shift blame to ensure that globalist agenda has a clear path to being implemented. They go on these shows, and who do they blame? They blame Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, a president of a foreign country that has nothing to do with it, a man who is fighting the globalist agenda back in his own country, and therefore he's an easy target for the Democrats because he is their political opponent. They blame Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who is no longer the American president, but because they have nowhere else to go, they continue to place they continue to point the finger in that direction. And they blame Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. There is no Texan that is fighting the globalists harder than Ken Paxton. He is fighting to bring the values of Texas back to Texas. And therefore, he is a target of the Democrat Party and of Texas Democrats. So they blame Vladimir Putin. They blame Donald Trump. They blame Ken Paxton. And none of these men are implementing the globalist agenda. It is the Texas Democrats that are the problem. And here is the thing. The Texas Democrats, they are elected to represent the people of Texas. And they are not representing Texans. They are representing foreign interests. They're representing the European billionaire class. They're representing people of the likes of George Soros, of Klaus Schwab, and of the Rothschild family, all the European billionaire class. They're representing the European billionaire class when they should be representing the people of Houston, Texas, the people of Needville, Texas, the people of Kingwood, Texas, the people of Katy, Texas, the people of the towns, cities, and neighborhoods of Texas. But they don't do that. They represent the interests of people like George Soros when they do not live in George Soros's neighborhoods. They don't live in his neighborhood. They don't live in Klaus Schwab's neighborhood. They live in our neighborhoods. They see us at the grocery stores. They see us when we're at the dry cleaners getting our laundry. And yet they continue to stab the American people, the people of Texas, in the back as they push forward with this globalist agenda. And this is the Chris Heasley Show. And on this show, we will bring you all of the ideas, the content, the information that you need to take back your cities, your towns, your neighborhood, the great state of Texas, to take it back from the globalists. We will give you all the ideas, but there is an obligation and a duty on your part. And it is for you to get active locally. Get active at the local level, because at the local level, you get the greatest bang for your buck. These are our cities and towns, and we need to reclaim them. And on today's show, we have Joe Collins. And there is no greater example of someone fighting to take back his town than Joe Collins, because again, he got out of service. After serving our country, he got put out on the streets, put out on the cold streets to fight for himself and his family. He got put out on the cold streets after serving his country. And what did he do? He took that experience and he led a campaign against the Democrat nightmare Maxine Waters. And thank goodness for that. And I'm not saying that you have to go to that extent. You don't have to go to that extent. That's an incredible example. But what you do have to do is you have to start going to your city councils, your school board meetings, your county commissioners' courts. You need to begin asking for meetings with your state representatives, and you need to become politically engaged. And this is the Chris Heasley Show. And on today's show, we have Joe Collins, and we also have G2 on the line. G2, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. Excellent. Good to hear from you. Thank you for being on the show today. I look forward to this hour. And Joe Collins, Joe, it is great to meet you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Chris.
Awesome. Awesome. Very good to have you in the studio. And I gave a pretty robust opening monologue there, Joe.
That was spirited.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate it, man. So I want to ask you, did I get it right? Are the factors that I discussed regarding the policies, the agendas that are being implemented, did that contribute to you having to go homeless after serving your country?
You know what I think what a lot of people don't understand is when you're a veteran, during that time that the VA system was broken, and so I wasn't able to get the proper care, treatment, or post-military VA treatments that I needed, and so that coupled with the fact that the economy was crap led to me becoming homeless. And I'm a terrible couch surfer. Like I tried to couch surf, it didn't work out. And I'm terrible at being homeless too, because I couldn't sleep where all the regular homeless people was out there, where they were doing drugs and shooting up. They smell really bad. I was bougie. I had to go sleep at the lighthouse where the ocean was, over the cliffs out in Rancho Palos Verdes. But I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, absolutely.
So can you just tell us a little bit about that experience? Tell us about when you came home, when you realized you had to go homeless. Did you have anywhere to stay in the meantime after serving the country? Just give us a little bit more in-depth explanation of what happened to you.
Well, I got out the military at the end of 2017, and initially I got out to get involved in politics. What they don't tell you when you join the military is that, they send you to basic training anywhere between 6 weeks to 2 to 4 months, depending on what branch you go through. And then are you going to enlisted or officer? But when you get out the military, you got 1 week of post-military training, and they do their best to, I wouldn't say they do their best, they can do better, but they do what they're supposed to do according to the regulations to get you a resume together and get you back in the streets. What they don't tell you is the VA system is broken. So before you can get a job, you have to get a VA rating. Before you can try to find any housing, you have to get a VA rating. Before you get your disability benefits or even your retirement, you have to go through this whole VA process to find out what's wrong with you. Now, if the system is broken, then you can never figure out what's wrong with you. If you can't figure out what's wrong with you, you don't have the opportunity to get the benefits, which means you either going to live off savings until that runs out, or you're going to be stuck like Chuck. And a lot of veterans are stuck like Chuck. That's why you see a lot of people who have signs that say, hey, I'm a homeless veteran, I need some help. And then after a while, you lose access to be able to get those benefits.
So when I was in college, I got scammed by a couple of other students at my university that were posing as homeless. And I think I gave them 10 or even $20, which is like a lot of money back in college, right? And so after that, I always assumed that I was going to get scammed or something of that sort. But then eventually when you see the homeless numbers just rising and rising and rising, and you realize that this is something more than just an anomaly, right? This is something that's really becoming an issue. I drove to Austin over the weekend, and we're used to seeing the homeless piled up under the bridges in Houston, and now they're even down on 59 South and Sugar Land in Fort Bend County. And I used to see the homeless in that area, but now when I'm driving to Austin, I see homeless backpacking the highways. I see them sleeping, at the gas stations. And it just seems to continue to keep expanding. And so, can you elaborate on what do you think is contributing to this incredible explosion in homelessness?
I already know what it is. The Democrats incentivize homelessness. In South Central Los Angeles, in Los Angeles, period, they house 150,000 homeless people. Now, we already know that the California government give these people anywhere between $800 to $1,200 every single month in stipends in order to, quote unquote, take care of themselves, but they also give them tents. They give, and people get mad when we used to talk about this, they give them free drug kits where you have a needle, you have, some type of other filters that you can utilize in order to do your illicit activities that are legal and heavy blue districts. So given that opportunity, and then they make the homeless people a separate class of protected citizens. So you can't even say anything to homeless people. They can crap in front of your house. They can camp out in front of your house. They already get money, so they can get up and walk wherever they want to. Panhandling is legal now. And then they get free drugs from either the homeless shelter or these different state government funded organizations. So that's the cause of homelessness. And then on top of that, you look on a national scale, you have the Biden administration who claims that inflation is transitory. So even then we have the increased cost of living from them funding hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries. Not that, and that was before the wars. Now we have the wars, so on top of the hundreds of billions of dollars they were sending as what they would consider foreign aid, now we have this funding for foreign wars that has caused the cost of living to go up. And even when you look at consumer goods during the COVID epidemic, the Biden administration came into office and immediately shut down all of our trade to America. So when you look at the major ports during that time, you will see 400 or 500 boats just sitting out in the ocean. They're not coming in. People are not working because, remember, they told everybody, go sit at home. Don't worry about it. We're going to give you $1,200. And so now you have consumer goods spoiling and trucks. And so that caused the increase in the price of goods in America.
You know, it is a purpose. I would like to make this clear. I feel like Americans, they are too forgiving and they don't like to pass judgment. And I think that we are well past passing judgment. Everything you described cannot just be a set of coincidences, or they can't just be happenstances that just happen to be out of the control of our governmental leaders. My whole point, the entire premise of the show, is that we have to start being cynical. This stuff is not a coincidence. It is a purposeful intent to place Americans in poverty. And then the other premise of the show I like to put out there a lot is that everyone likes to assign that blame to this to the national level, and it should be. But the truth is they don't want to, Texans do not want to think that it's being carried out at the local level. Everything's being carried out at the local level. And my point is that everything that you just said, our Texas Democrats, they should have a loyalty to Texans first. They're not dumb, okay? They should have a loyalty to Texans first, and they should be taking every data point that you just said, and they should be turning and confronting their own political party at the national level. Could you imagine how powerful it would be if we had Republicans and Democrats in solidarity challenging the establishment? And that's just what I'm aghast at, is that these Democrats live in our neighborhoods, they live in our towns, and they still push forward this agenda that is harming people. But with that being said, I want to just expand on one thing. Can you tell me more? You said that there were ships at port that were full of food and they were not being allowed into port?
Yeah, cargo ships at every single major port, just here in the Gulf, in New York and Georgia, in Washington State, in Los Angeles. During that time, they had everybody sitting at home. They shut off the supply chain to the United States. And so you had thousands of cargo ships just sitting out in the bay, not able to come in. So not only did you have food spoiling, you had consumer goods spoiling. I mean, just think about it. You know, you got some places in the Gulf here, it gets about 115, 116 degrees in the summertime. If you got electronics, guess what? The electronics are damaged now. They're heat damaged.
So, you know, again, everything that we're saying is not an accident. It's not happenstance. It was scripted out on a whiteboard by the European billionaire class. They have all of these methods. They script them out on the whiteboards, and then they implement them. I remember when that was happening because I remember people who were getting their houses built. Building materials for houses were delayed by up to 12 months, and everybody was pointing to the ports. I remember when that happened. So G2, you're on the line. Do you have anything to add? It's quite a conversation.
When you think about this homeless problem, and of course, Texas has a much more diverse economy than it had back when it was just oil dependent. You've got a lot more defense in Houston. You've got a lot more tech in Austin than ever has been there before. But despite that robust economy, that economic, growth in and diversification in Texas, homelessness in Texas grew by 12% in 2023. 12%. Now, that wasn't out of line with national trends, but it is a troubling trend. And the numbers relative to the population of Texas are still relatively small, but they're rapidly increasing. And if you talk to people who go to Austin, they now talk about, the homeless people on the street. You touched on a lot of the reasons why this is happening. And one of the most important, of course, is the fentanyl attack. And I say attack because this nation knows that fentanyl is going from the CCP in China to the cartels, from the cartels into the United States across the border. Those cartels control. and then being distributed nationwide by the cartel's retail distribution system, which is extremely efficient and can touch every market in the U.S. So that is, fentanyl, so much stronger than heroin, stronger than drugs they've seen in the past. That is really akin to a chemical weapon being inserted into our communities by the CCP, by the cartels nationwide. Now, who's the third partner in that? Well, that'd be the government that refuses to defend its border, and that government is controlled by the globalists in the Democrat Party. When Alejandro Mayorkas says there is no crisis at the border, he's right, because for him it's not a crisis that we've had 10 million people come across that border we don't know, and that they're bringing this chemical weapon in massive quantities, and that we're losing nationwide something in the neighborhood of 100,000 people a year to the fentanyl weapon. So you got drugs. But there's also this problem of rising housing costs, and this inflationary pressure in housing is pushing people out of homes because wages are not growing as fast as inflation. What's driving inflation? Well, we all know what's driving inflation. It is the utterly, ridiculously irresponsible spending policies put in place by the Democrat Party when they took over this government in 2020. Now, in 2021. Now, to be clear, our government has been running deficits for a very long time. We've been accumulating debt for a long time. But never before have we hit a pace where we were accumulating $1 trillion of debt every 90 days, where we are spending $2 trillion more every year than we take in. These are astronomical numbers. And everybody should be crystal clear. It is printing of that money. It's that ridiculously significant spending at the government level that is causing the inflation that is making all of our prices go up. That is the driver of inflation. Wages are not rising as fast as inflation. So to be clear, wages are not an inflation driver. And one of the reasons, of course, that they're bringing millions and millions of people across the border is specifically to keep wages low. And a lot of people think, well, yeah, it's just for people who cut grass. No. The people coming across that border they'll be certainly taking low-skilled jobs. They're going to be taking medium-skilled jobs. And through HB1 programs and other immigration programs that are abused every single day, they're also putting pressure on high-skilled jobs. These are going to affect computer programmers. They're going to affect everyone throughout the labor market. So you see this incredible pressure from money printing, which is driving inflation, and from the importation of labor, which is suppressing wage growth, so that the American family is being squeezed more every day. And if you think about this from the perspective of somebody who is, say, in the 1835 demographic, they're looking at this and saying, how will I ever have the prosperity that I thought America represented? Because my wages aren't growing as fast as the cost of housing. Housing's now so expensive that I can't really afford the place I'm living. This all comes together to be driving more and more people out of their homes. So you're right. It is these policies that are put in place. It's regulatory. Look at oil and gas. It's regulatory. It is fiscal. It's monetary. It's a combination of policies driven by globalists who control the Democrat Party that are destroying the prosperity of the American family. Now, there's one group that is still very, very prosperous, and those are the ones that are collecting the money from government. And I don't mean the people that are on welfare. I'm talking about the people who have long-term government contracts, people who have these consultancies that work in the nonprofits. You mentioned homeless profitability. It is funded. There are people working in the homeless industry, and it is now an industry, that are making $250,000 or more a year, running non-governmental organizations or nonprofits that are supposedly helping the homeless. And what do we get every year? More homeless. So what are they actually doing? They're just collecting government money. So I think you've done a great job of laying the foundation of what's causing this problem. And it is a real problem. We are facing every day increasing pressure on homelessness. And I guess that's why the globalists love to say, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, here's the news for us. We're going to own nothing and we're going to be very unhappy if this continues.
Hey, G2, let me add something to that nobody hardly ever talks about. You look at extreme liberal states like California that used to be extremely beautiful and New York that used to be extremely beautiful. Now these states have been destroyed by people who vote for these liberal policies who think it's going to benefit them in the long run. Well, they haven't. And so when you look at a state like California, where you have anywhere between 5 to 7 million people who have moved out of California, and then you have about 10 million people who have moved out of New York, everybody has came to Florida and Texas. I think Texas has taken on in the last 3 years about 7 million new people. And these are legal people. These are legal voters. And the majority of these people are liberals. And so the same people who have voted to destroy California and who have voted to destroy New York no longer like living there because of their own decisions that they made when it came to voting. Now they're living in Texas. And so where you had the great state of Texas who had the infrastructure and the economy to be able to support those projects, now you don't, because the same liberals who keep making bad decisions are still making bad decisions. They're only making bad decisions in Texas now. And when you have that many people move to a state, they have to create more housing. They have the money to pick up the housing that's already available. And people who are not making that much money have to move out of that housing as well. But nobody ever talks about that. Like when I go around to the Republican parties and stuff, because I am a Republican, and I am black, I am from the inner city, and I'm wearing I plead the second shirt because I'm a member of the NRA, and I'm pro 2A. But when I go talk to these Republican parties, I'm like, yo, I think Texas is turning purple, because you look at the legislators that are in office right now, you look at the type of bills that they're voting for, and this is a direct reflection of the people who are moving here who have voted to destroy their own states. I mean, when you start listening to Texas push bills that are talking about allowing our children to experience transgenderism when they can't even make decisions on what color shoes to wear in the morning, we have a problem. When I joined the military, we couldn't drink until we were 21, and we couldn't smoke cigarettes until we were 18. But yet you let these kids who can't even tell if they want Cocoa Pebbles or Frosted Flakes for breakfast make a decision on if they want to be a boy or girl.
The radicalization of these people has been incredible. To get to the point you just made. No, at 18, you can't make a decision at 12 years old on whether or not to get a tattoo because it's a permanent life-altering decision. But you want to cut off your genitals, they're okay with that. And I've spoken to someone who the doctors got a hold of at 12. She was a bit of a tomboy, so they began injecting her with hormones. At 13, they cut off her breasts, these monsters. At 16, she became strong enough to say, what are you doing to me? I don't want to be a boy. And she fought them off and got out of that situation. Now she's trying to heal. And I will tell you, it's not a simple thing to heal from what these monsters did to her. But that narrative that somehow, we're always as Americans asked to hold these completely mutually exclusive ideas in our heads. No, a child of 12 can't decide to get a tattoo or to smoke a cigarette or to drink an alcoholic beverage. But of course they can decide to cut off their genitals. That is just ridiculous on its face. And there are other contradictions we've been groomed to believe. But this radicalization has gotten so extreme, there is pushback on it. But one of the reasons this stuff is actually succeeding in Texas more than it should, and we've talked about this on earlier shows with school board candidates, is that the Republican Party doesn't fight hard enough. The Republican Party often, and think about this, the idea that the teachers' unions and this radical Democrat group, these freaks, put child pornography in schools across the country, and there are 100 examples of these you could see, and they're in schools all over the place, including in Texas. If you haven't seen the books, you should go see the books so you understand what we're talking about. No, there is not a law. Well, there is a law in Texas now that protects children from explicit sexual materials in schools, but up until that law was passed, that was not the case. So these explicit materials all over has the Republican Party risen up to fight against that? Candidates have. Some county committees have. But the party as a whole has largely said, we don't want to talk about that because it's off-putting. It makes people think we're mean. So it was up to people like Moms for Liberty to come out and say sexually explicit material shouldn't be in the books. So just to fully respond to your comment, yes, it's true that when a huge number of Californians moved from California to Austin, they changed the nature of Austin, and we suddenly have this phrase, keep Austin weird, as a motto, a motto they're proud of. That's a weird kind of thing to adopt for a city. But look what's happened. Now you've got expanding homelessness. They're spending $27,000 a person. Where San Francisco spends say $85,000, they'll get it up. So they've had an impact because they leave the disaster they created, move to a place that isn't a disaster, and then demand that the new place they live conform to their bizarre beliefs. All right, so that's definitely a problem. But there is another problem, and that is that the people of Texas have to band together and fight back against this radical ideology and these damaging globalist policies. And as part of that, they have to continue to pressure the Republican Party not to be part of the uniparty, but rather to represent the interests of Texans and the Republican voter, and, by the way, the moderate Democrat voter, who doesn't want their child groomed at school, who doesn't want to be homeless, who doesn't want out-of-control inflation, and doesn't want the nation invaded. It's time for the Republican Party nationwide to plant its feet, cast aside its uniparty ways, and begin standing with its voters.
I think there's a lot of momentum on the right now. But I do, and I feel like the people that are leftists that put us in this position, the reason that we are hurting right now is because people voted for Joe Biden, because people agreed with the masks, they agreed with the vaccines. They never pushed back and challenged that agenda. And I understand that, okay? But there is momentum coming our side. There's an enlightenment process that's happening, and there are people that are sort of red pilling and coming to our side. But for those Americans that continue to hunker down on these leftist positions that are everything that we talked about, putting people on the streets, mistreating our children, all of these other things, I think Americans and Texans need to quit watching their words around these people at the family reunions and at the dinner table conversations. The ideas of this sadistic left needs to be confronted. It needs to be confronted. And what do you guys think about that?
Well, personally, I think Joe Biden was a blessing in disguise, to be honest with you, because, look, we told him it was going to be bad if he got to office. But, some people, they got to be shown how bad it can get before they can appreciate how good things can get. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had a great economy. Taxes was extremely low. Everybody was making money under a Trump economy. We had absolutely no wars. But then the left was like, well, Donald Trump is dangerous and all of this stuff. And the exact same thing that the leftist Democrats was talking about Donald Trump was going to do, Joe Biden is completely that. He got into office, the economy tanked. We're back in like 3 or 4 different wars. We're giving money to everybody. The economy is crap. Everybody's suffering financially. Illegal immigrants all over the place. And people want to willfully ignore what's going on so they can be trivial about little bitty things. Oh, well, he gave everybody $12,000. Yeah, but if you live in California, how far is $12,000 going to get you? Inflation is coming down. Yeah, but like compared to what? Inflation is down from the 19% or 50% or whatever it was that it used to be. And it's not even down to 4%. It's down to 0.5%. Well, the Fed might cut the interest rates, but they haven't cut them yet. So we're still struggling.
Okay, so we have covered so much in this show, all right? I mean, I will not be able to list everything that we've covered, but we have fully articulated a sadistic agenda being placed on our kids. We have articulated a cutting off of imports to cause our food prices to go up. We've articulated a purposeful act to create inflation. We've articulated a purposeful act to allow immigrants to come across the border and replace us in our workspace, so on and so forth. And what I'm trying to say is, for the mental image, I would like everyone to get a mental image. All of this was put down on a whiteboard by the European billionaire class. George Soros was in that meeting. The Rothschilds were in that meeting. Klaus Schwab was in that meeting. They got their agenda, it's evil brilliance. And they put it on us with the purpose of putting us in peasantry. And then what they did is they sent they put that plan into marching orders, and they faxed it. They sent it out by fax, and it went through the DNC. The DNC got it, they read it, they understand it, and then they fax it to all the county Democrat offices. And the agenda is being implemented. And what we're trying to say is that it is time for Texans to take back their Democrat Party and to take back their local governments. And that doesn't get done by sitting on the sidelines. We have to get active and involved.
You know what that meeting was called?
if I say it, I get called a conspiracy theorist, which I'm okay with being called that. That's completely fine because those theories continue to get more legitimacy by the day.
But you can't be a conspiracy
But I mean,
theorist
like,
if they put it on TV. It was literally all on TV. Like
Yeah.
the whole entire meeting was on TV, and you saw they had billionaire actors that was there. Klaus Schwab, everybody was there. The WEF.
Okay. Well, first it went by the name Bilderberg Group, right?
That's still around too. That's a separate group.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So they go through these names. They expel the names because I think that people get a little too privy to them. But yes, now it's called the WEF or the Davos Group.
Yeah.
But it's this generational set of billionaires. And I think the other important thing is that we sort of place legitimacy with these billionaires, and these guys are not. They're not normal people.
They're not.
They would not make it in a social setting in any Texas. Go to any Texas barbecue restaurant. They will be wallflowers.
You ain't gonna ever lie about that. You know what
They're weird dudes.
One thing that's consistent with that organization in the United States is, even in the WEF, they still have these super old senior citizens running that organization, just like when you look at America, we have super old senior citizens running America. I was telling somebody on the elevator, I was like, yo, like they didn't even have cell phones back when some of these people got in office. They didn't have cable TVs. They didn't have remote controls. You remember you used to have to like turn a dial on the back of the big back TVs in order to get a great channel. That's what we're dealing with. I mean, like these people have been around forever, and that's why we can't ever change.
Nancy Pelosi is as old as the hills, and she still has I would say, I mean, I'm going to be called some names here, but she still has a decent appearance. She is old as the hills, and she still looks okay. And it just makes me wonder, what does the billionaire class, what are they injecting in their skin to get that appearance?
Well, once the Botox treatment stopped, then, But look, that's why Donald Trump had like this huge agenda to stop the child trafficking, stop human trafficking, in general. And to be honest with you, there is sort of a correlation between, the way these politicians look and human trafficking, because ain't no way. I mean, you can pile a lot of makeup on Maxine Waters' face and she's still going to look a mess.
All right. So 20 years ago, I lived in Pavlodar, Kazakhstan, which is a Russian city on the Kazakh-Russian border. Sometimes it falls into Russia, sometimes it falls into Kazakhstan, but it's now a Kazakh city. But essentially, it's a Russian city, very Russian influence. It's just outside of Siberia. And when I went there, there was always a group of parents that were people that were coming to adopt Russian kids, Russian and Kazakh kids. And I stayed at a hotel, and I would meet these people, and they were decent people, and it was an incredible experience because I was there when they would meet their new adopted child for the first time. It was incredible. Good people, a great thing that was happening for the world. And what happened is I met a Russian guy, and he said, that's great. These people are great. I don't judge them, but there is an element within this adoption, business that is very sick, twisted, dark, and evil. And what they do is they attain these children, and then they sell them off for parts or for other sexual interests. And I told him, I said, again, this was in the year 2001 maybe, and I said, come on, man. I said, that's not true. That's a conspiracy theory. That is not happening. And he said, oh, thank you. I'm so glad that that's not true, right? But what happened is that then about 10 years after that, Vladimir Putin shut down all cross-Atlantic adoption for all CIS countries, all of the 15 or 17 former Soviet Union countries. He shut it down. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But what the Americans did is they said, oh, he just overreacted to one incident of child abuse. Okay, but then after that, a couple years after that, then we discovered Epstein Island, and then we learned about this whole sick industry that exists. And at that point in time, I realized that 20 years earlier, that Russian man in Pavlodar, Kazakhstan, was telling me something that was true. And it's just a fascinating, way to look back at that story. But so yeah, it's a sick, twisted, dark agenda. G2, I'm going to hand it off to you. I know you got some thoughts.
Well, when you talked a moment ago about the change in attitudes that's happening, it is crystal clear that that's true. And there's some polling data that actually supports that. Rasmussen did a poll this week that shows an increase for Donald Trump support by about 1%, puts him now at a 10% position over Biden. So he's about 46% of likely voters would vote for Trump, about 36% for Biden, about 9% for RFK Jr. in a three-way race. That is a significant change over time. When you look at the Black American market for Black American males, in a traditional time, they would typically support a Republican candidate at about a rate of 8% of the likely voter. 8% of likely Black American voters would support a Republican. Donald Trump hit 12% in 2020. It was an astonishingly strong number. About 6 months ago, New York Times and Siena announced that number had climbed to 22%. And most recently, a new poll shows it at 30. So it's not just that there's a one-off poll showing some of these trends changing. These are different polls from different groups that are not politically aligned, and they are all showing a significant shift in thinking. And that includes among very core demographics, critical demographics for this radical Democrat globalist policy to be implemented, right? They need to hold on to those people. There's another group that is shocking to most people, which is young voters. And as you're talking to folks that are in that, again, 18 to 35 range, and they're hearing or looking forward and seeing what they're seeing throughout their school years, they've been just pounded with these stories about how they have to consider multiple genders and spend all this time pondering who they want to have sex with and reading these books. They're rejecting that in larger numbers every day and stepping back from this radical agenda. So in the young, in the Hispanic community, in the Black American community, in pretty much every community except that associated with radical campus life, professors and people with multiple advanced degrees, in every other community, there is a tremendous move toward a pro-Constitution, pro-American agenda. That's great news for the country. Now, to be clear, this globalist, leftist, radical enemy does not intend to surrender the nation easily, right? They intend to fight. So it's going to be a long, hard battle from here to November, and anything can happen. An economic point that we hadn't touched on, oddly enough, for Texas, is oil and gas prices. If you remember, when the Democrats took over the White House in 2021, they immediately began implementing policies that made crude oil pricing climb, that made energy as a whole much, much more expensive, both by attacking the oil industry and the gas industry while subsidizing in great numbers these high-cost, unreliable technologies like windmills. So they've implemented a set of policies to drive our prices up, and of course, then they got their war with Russia, and they put in sanctions that boomeranged right back on the United States and European consumer in the form of higher oil and gas prices. So now we've got West Texas Intermediate trading around $78 or $79 a barrel. Not historically a price that's ever been seen before. Of course it has. It's been seen. We've been in there and higher. But at that number, we should have maximum production. And alas, we do. The United States is now producing almost 13 million barrels a day. So it's a huge number. We're by far the largest producer. We're outproducing Saudi and the others. But if you look at the rig count year over year is actually down. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we get our oil prices down so our cost of energy comes down? That is a very key inflation driver. And how do we get these radicals to reverse their energy policies that are making energy one of the factors that are driving Americans out of their homes or stealing the future for those who are just entering the workforce? It is hard for people to grasp the multifaceted nature of this attack on our freedoms, our safety, our security, and prosperity. It's hard for people to put all that in their heads. We've never faced certain Venezuelan gangs that are now getting strong footholds in the United States. They were never, ever mentioned before, but now they're becoming factors in major cities like Chicago and New York. It is actually an undermining of our safety, security, prosperity, and freedom. And I think more people are recognizing this, but again, between now and November, the American people have to put a lot of effort into educating themselves so that it's an informed citizen that goes to the polls, not someone affected by 30-second ads that they saw on a Google site. So,
Well, did you?
those are some thoughts.
Okay, bud. So, I pulled this meme off the internet. It's actually Fox News. It's a Fox News screenshot. I apologize, we're a radio show, so I can't show it to you. But essentially, what it shows is on a $400,000 house, the monthly mortgage payment, and it shows it going up 59.2%. So on a $400,000 house, the monthly mortgage payment going from January 2021 to 2024 from $1,349 to $2,148. I apologize, a lot of quick numbers there. But essentially what I'm trying to say is that in the past 4 years, on a $400,000 house, the monthly mortgage payment has gone up 59%. And then, of course, somebody put that meme together and put at the top of it another 4 years, and the middle class, most of the middle class will be bankrupt. And I think that we've made the case that this is absolutely devastating. Our economy today is devastating to the low income class, to the poor class, whatever you want to call it. And I just feel like, as Americans, we need to come together and help out our people at the bottom. And that doesn't mean that you give them $1 at the red light or whatever. You don't get, I'm not saying you have to do that, but I'm saying you do have to take action locally, and you have to start challenging the leftists in your lives. You need to start confronting them with these facts and statistics. And so today it's in the lower income. It's absolutely devastating to our low-income families, but it is...
May I address the housing cost just for a second? I'll do this real brief. Mm-hmm. You make a great point with this. And so there are two things that have happened. One is that the money printing has driven the price of housing up. The mass migration has driven the price of housing up, both domestic and international migration, people running away from places like California, Illinois, and so on, and people coming from all over the world unchecked. So you've got inflationary pressure on house prices, and then the Fed raised rates extraordinarily quickly. So you've really put housing out of the reach of most people who might have 20 years ago been considering buying a home. The idea that the Fed is trying to fight inflation by raising interest rates is a lie. You don't fight inflation by raising interest rates while the federal government is running $2 trillion deficits. The deficits and the policies, like the energy policies, are driving inflation. Then they increase rates. And you know who really gets squeezed? It's the middle class. It's the working families. That's who's getting hammered by these rate increases. But these rate increases will not fight inflation. They'll simply slow it down. To fight inflation, they've got to implement a more conservative, more balanced fiscal policy, right? You can't print money and then say, I'm going to stop inflation by raising rates. You got to stop the money printing. So when you said earlier that they might cut interest rates, they may do that just because they want to help the Democrats get into stay in the White House, stay in control of Congress. But the reality is, if they cut interest rates now and continue to print this crazy amount, this $2 trillion that they're printing, the $1 trillion every 100 days that we're accruing in debt, if they continue these monetary and fiscal policies and regulatory policies, we could enter a hyperinflationary situation. And if you want to see real for the middle class, for the working people, that's where it's coming.
I believe they can cut the interest rates, and it's still not going to make any difference because the cost of living is still so high from the amount of money that Congress is spending. They can make it negative interest rates. We're still going to have quantitative tightening. It's going to be a mess. Whether they cut the rates or raise the interest rates, it's going to be a mess. Now, what they need to do is they need to sign an executive order that says, look, if we can't come up with a balanced budget that's not going to increase the federal deficit or that's more than what the budget was the previous 10 years as a median, then we need to just cut Congress pay and take the pay that we cut from the members of Congress and their staff and just put that into the budget and spend Congress money, their paychecks. Nobody ever spends Congress paychecks.
Great idea.
I mean, I would be okay with Congress if they made an incredible salary, as long as they didn't dip into the community jar, and they exercise fiscal responsibility. But yeah, I mean, my point on that meme is that it cannot be more obvious. Okay, so that Fox News printout shows 59% increase in mortgages over the past 4 years for a $400,000 house. And as G2 explained, it's putting it out of the reach of the average citizen. It is soon going to be hitting the middle class. This is all coming. It's a train wreck coming. And at the same time, while it's out of the reach of the lower and middle class, you have BlackRock setting up funds to buy homes. And you have BlackRock setting up funds to buy multi-unit apartments. And these things are not coincidences. This is evil brilliance being put on the people of Texas and being carried out by your Texas Democrats. And even
in Texas, the Democrats want to put. I don't know if you guys looked at the ballots. The Democrats put on a ballot that they wanted to increase the property tax so they can pay for more social programs in Texas that had nothing to do with improving schools, that had nothing to do with improving that specific community parks, that had nothing to do with improving the lives of the people who live in that community. That's the same thing that they did in California. Well, we're going to raise the property insurance 10% because we got to pay for new roads. Well, isn't that what the registration and car fees are supposed to pay for when you buy a car or register a car? Are we going to put a 7 or 10? They've been adding 7% tax on gas in California for the last 5 or 6 election cycles. And so gas in California is going on like $8 a gallon right now. And when I looked on the ballot, I'm like, wow, okay, so you want to increase property taxes? Nope. You want to put a gas tax? Nope. Because then that taxpayer, they buy a house because they want to create some type of value for their family, or they want to build some type of generational wealth through purchasing a home. Now they become the funders of these social programs when it's supposed to be Texas that's supposed to be the funder of these social programs. And just like G2 was talking about earlier with the oil industry, if you don't have industry that you can tax as a state in order to pay for these social programs, then you need to get rid of everybody that's in that government. So everybody in Austin, if you can't afford these social programs or the things that you want to do outside of taking care of using people's money to take care of that specific community, then you have no business being in office. Because what value are you adding? You're not a businessman. Businessmen know how to make money. That's why Donald Trump was so good. When you look at Austin, you have a few businessmen, but then you have a bunch of attorneys who are litigators. They're professional arguers, but they're not creating any type of industry that they can tax, that they can use that tax money to be able to fund whatever dumb social programs they think is necessary.
And I think it's absurd that while we're in here, and I mean we haven't produced a single positive point for our economy in this conversation. I'd love to be able to give people something to latch their hopes onto, which I assume the only thing is the 2024 this election coming up. But when we're in this economic malaise, and then they begin sending our money to Israel, as if we have the money to send to Israel. So they send our money to Israel. They send our money to the Ukraine. And there should be a law. I mean, there should be a law that not a single dollar leaves for any reason at all in perpetuity. In my opinion, I don't see why they would ever send a dollar to another country from us.
Especially when they can't even account for it. And when Ukraine has been one of the most corrupt countries for the past 40 years. And the CIA has them down as one of the most corrupt countries, yet we're giving them hundreds of billions. I think we're about $190 billion. Correct me if I'm wrong or not. We're about $190 billion so far in the last 2 or 3 years that we've sent to Ukraine, and that's on top of the foreign aid that they already get from us.
Yeah, right. And these things, these solutions, these issues that are being brought to us. For the Democrats, it's always, well, we're going to have to gut you in order to solve this problem. And then when we do gut you, don't expect the problem to be solved. We're going to stop it. We're going to keep it, slow it down from ruining our lives. Whereas under the President Trump administration, with $0 being spent on foreign policy, we had world peace. And how did we do it? We did it with operating from a position of strength. With Donald Trump, we had a program in place, not where this whole conversation is about how life is getting away from our low-income Americans. With Donald Trump, he was putting the ability to buy a house into the hands of low-income Americans without any dollars being sent on the federal budget. And so, this whole idea that comes from the Democrats, and by the way, I understand there's a Republican element that is lockstep with the Democrats. The issue is that the root of the problem is with the Democrats, And of course, there's opportunity within the Republicans because there's been a huge cleansing within that party. But we've taken up all the time, guys. I want to thank you. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you both. I thank you, G2, for being on the show. Thank you, Joe Collins. I appreciate you, and I hope to look forward to your political career. And again, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We will be back here on Monday at 1.